like to call the April board meeting to order. Would you all please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Keeling makes that motion. Mr. Schultz makes the second. All those in favor? 7-0. We have a study session minutes of March 26th. We have regular session minutes of March 26th. We have closed session minutes of March 26th. And I need a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Mr. Anderson makes that motion. Mr. Deering seconds it. All those in favor? 7-0, Megan. Board recognition, Dr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's always a bittersweet time of year when it's kind of like graduation, right? For some, when you get to say goodbye to some folks you've worked with and hello to new ones. So first, I'm going to recognize our current board officers. Our officers are willing to take on additional responsibilities and provide leadership to our Board of Education. They accept these responsibilities because they care deeply for the students and the district we serve, and a desire to provide the necessary leadership and continue our growth as a model for excellence in the educational community across our state. So the first person I will recognize is our current and outgoing president, Mr. Butch O'Reilly. Mr. O'Reilly served as president of the Board of Education for the past school year. During his tenure, our district has made progressive changes, including a reorganization of district administrative responsibilities and the addition of new student activities. So, Mr. O'Reilly, if you'd please come forward.
We're going to be here.
I'll be the gift deliverer. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Did he make me look like I had a lot of hair or anything? So, throw it off. Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. Next up is our current Vice President, Mr. Paul Schultz. Mr. Schultz served as Vice President over the past year and played a vital role in the progress our school district has made. He was recently elected for his second term on the Waynesville School Board. So, Mr. Schultz.
Sunglasses on.
All right, we're going to take 2. 1, 2.
You have a Snapchat filter?
You made him take his sunglasses.
There we go. Ready?
Great.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Sorry.
Make fun of you.
Yeah, that's Next, we have Dr. Leroy Fulmer, who served as secretary throughout the previous year and continues to play a critical role on numerous state-level MSBA committees.
One, two, three. Got it.
And finally, you know, I have to kind of go from the hip here because we didn't know that Mr. Quinn was back with us. So welcome back to Mr. Quinn. He is, I guess I will say, been away on business. And we certainly are very excited to have you back, and just wanted to say thank you. Over the last year, Mr. Quinn has served as treasurer, and we appreciate all he's done to advance all of our efforts in the district. So, Mr. Charles Quinn. Good surprise on business. This is my good side here.
1, 2, 3.
We're good.
Frame that.
Better?
He wanted the big present, so. Now we recognize a colleague who will be leaving the board, Mr. Andy Anderson. Mr. Anderson has served numerous terms on the Waynesville Board of Education and contributed a great deal of time to the betterment of our educational system. Mr. Anderson has long been an advocate of improved facilities at Waynesville Middle School, and his involvement in our recent renovations has been an asset to our school and to our community. While Mr. Anderson may be leaving the board, we know he will continue to advocate for the students of the Waynesville School District. Mr. Anderson.
One, two, there we go.
And now, in a few moments, our new board member will be sworn in. So we welcome Mrs. Janet Kreider. Mrs. Kreider was in the military. She has a military spouse and a son who's an officer in the United States Army. She understands the life of a military family and has contributed her time to our district as a supporter of our recent Proposition 1 campaign. So we welcome you, Mrs. Kreider. And with the closing, yes, I think that deserves, a brave person to run for such a position. With the closing of one board, we look forward to ushering in the opening of a new board in a few minutes. We appreciate the contributions of this excellent team and the great things to come. So thank you.
Thank you. Action item A, election results. Dr. Henry?
Yes, we're asking the board to approve the election, the recent election results for the Board of Education.
Okay, may I have a motion? Dr. Former makes that motion. Second. Mr. Schultz seconds it. All those in favor? 6-0, Megan. With no further business, the Board of Education will adjourn. Need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Keenan makes that motion. Seconded by Mr. Quinn. All those in favor? 6-0, Megan. We are adjourned.
Yep, we stand adjourned. So, Mrs. Ace is ready for her favorite time of the year. We'll need to have Mrs. Kreider and Mr. Schultz.
How to get the backdrop in. Yeah. I could have you two repeat after me. I do
You have the
solemnly
ray of sun
swear
coming on your head. I have boogers coming
that I will
down.
support the Constitution of the United States
This looks like one of those mom
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that I will faithfully, impartially, discharge the duties of school board member in and for the Waynesville R6 School District, County of Pulaski, State of Missouri, to the best of my ability, according to law. Thank you, and if I could just grab your signature. Yep, here is the part.
So you trying a new food? You trying a new food?
That is just a gorgeous country, and the food it's so different. I laugh, and fish, everything. I go back to him.
Okay, at this time, we will call the meeting of the Board of Education to order. The first order of business is I'm acting as temporary chairperson until we nominate a president who will take over after that nomination is made. We'll accept all nominations for president. Seconds are not required by Robert's rules. A member can rise to accept or decline the nomination. After each nomination, I will say the candidate's name and ask if they are full, or if there are any further nominations. Motion is not necessary to close nominations unless it's apparent that individuals are being nominated as an honor only and have no intention to serve. After these guys are laughing over here. After that, I will ask for a vote in favor of the first candidate and then a vote in favor of the second candidate. If there's only one candidate, we will move to approve the president by acclamation. So at this point, I will accept nominations for the office of president.
I nominate Mr. Schultz for the office of president.
Paul Schultz has been nominated for the office of president. Hearing no other nominations, we will move by acclamation to have Mr. Schultz take over as president of the Waynesville School Board.
Is that the honor deal that you don't have to serve you talked about?
Yeah. I don't know what you're meeting now, buddy. So there we go.
Well, thank you all very much. Thanks to Mr. O'Reilly for his last year's service. Thank you, Andy. We welcome Janet and Mr. Quinn and Dr. Fulmer for their service last year. Also, a little plug to WCC TigerTV. They really brought home the gold at Skills USA, so congratulations to you guys. With that being said, I will take a motion for Vice President.
Make a motion, Dr. Fulmer?
Dr. Fulmer? With no other motions, we'll move to place Dr. Fulmer as Vice President. I'll need a motion for Secretary.
I make a motion, Mr. O'Reilly.
Any others? Okay, with no other competition there, Mr. O'Reilly takes over as Secretary. Motion for Treasurer.
I nominate Dan Deering.
And it looks like you have your officers. That, number 3, agenda. I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Do I have a
Make that
motion?
motion.
Mr. Keeling makes the motion. Mr. Quinn seconds. All in favor? 7-0 in
We need
favor?
to trade places.
Now we're good.
Now we're good for
You look
this
good over there,
meeting.
man. You make my right side look shiny.
Look young, don't I? Make your right side look young. I
All
know.
right, number 5, written communications. Dr. Henry?
Thank you, Mr. President. This time we had no written requests for public statement as per Board Policy BDDH.
Okay. And then A, citizens' participation and statements.
We had no written communications either.
Okay. Number 6, military report.
So congratulations to the newly elected school board members, and congratulations to those that campaigned and won the slate of officers. But anyway, continuing with Month of the Military Child and Child Abuse Prevention Month, Fort Leonard Wood is continuing to host a variety of daily and weekend activities for families. We ask that you please check with local calendars and events listed in the off-duty section of the guide on. For families in particular with younger age children, story time for toddlers every Tuesday in the library this month starting at 10:30, and every Wednesday for pre-kindergarten age children starting at 12:30. Just a reminder for Dr. Henry, the golf season starts this month.
Oh, thank goodness.
We'll be having the Commanding General Scramble on the 27th of April with a noon start time. I know you're interested. And Armed Services YMCA is hosting a Healthy Kids Day at the USO on Saturday, 28th April, starting at 9 o'clock until noon. And then a quick advertisement, save the date, Friday, 20 July, on Gerlach Field. Fort Leonard Wood will host a concert featuring the 2018 Academy of Country Music Vocal Group of the Year winner, Old Dominion. And that'll be the 20th of July, so save the date.
Thank
So
you.
that's it.
B, district announcements. Dr. Henry?
Thank you, Mr. President. As Mr. Bardell referred to my golfing expertise, every year, one time a year, it won't be at that particular challenge, but if you do, I'll put a shameless plug in for our booster club. One time a year I appear for golfing. Typically Dr. Berger gets to see that, as does Mr. Keeling. Is usually on my team, and some other unknowing soul that golfs in that foursome, and it's a pretty neat thing to see, let me tell you what. And then I put the clubs up for another year until we come back. So
Go to a chiropractor.
yeah, well, that's right. It's a stress on everybody's back, you know. that's when you can come see me. So hopefully that'll get some people out here. Tonight, it's great to see our sixth grade center back here. You all need to hoot and holler for us back here so we can see you. It's a Monday, and I know, but no, the sixth grade center is our Spotlight on Education recipient tonight, and I appreciate so much the work they do, and appreciate all of our teachers and our staff in that building. Having had a child go through that building and the wonderful innovative learning that goes on, we truly appreciate everything that you do, so thank you very much. The election of school board members was held on Tuesday, April the 3rd. I want to congratulate incumbent Paul Schultz and welcome newcomer Janet Kreider. I also want to thank Andy Anderson for his many years of service to the board and to our students. The inaugural Showcase Waynesville Schools will begin at 5:30 on Thursday, May the 3rd, 2018. This showcase, the first of its kind in our district, will feature the arts, performing arts, and demonstrations. It also includes appetizers and a banquet prepared by the WCC's culinary arts students. During this event, Bill Ransdell will be named the first recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Alumni Award, and Judith Learman will be named the Outstanding Educational Professional. In addition, the late Wayne Bandy will receive the Lifetime Achievement Alumni Award posthumously. Tickets are $35 apiece. Seating is very limited and is on a first-come, first-served basis. If you're interested in tickets, please contact Amy Ransdell Breeden at waynesvillefoundation@gmail.com. The Eye and the Tiger newsletter will drop in the mail at the end of this month. I announced this previously, but wanted to remind everyone that with the Waynesville High School Theater and Music Departments and Thespian Troupe 1669 will present the musical The Hunchback of Notre Dame at 7 p.m. on April 19th through 2021 and on April 22nd at 2:30 p.m. I would like to invite you to participate in the opening ceremony for Special Olympics, which will be on April the 19th. Please note that this event has been moved to the Waynesville Middle School track. The ceremony begins at 9:15 a.m. with events immediately following. Our district will recognize our 2,030 volunteers who dedicated time to our district at the Volunteer Banquet on April 26th. What an amazing number. Graduation remains Friday, May 18th. However, because of inclement weather days, our last day of school, as of right now, is May 25, since it continues to snow into April. We're hoping. I appreciate you leaving that on there, Mary Ann. So, MAP testing has begun, and attendance is critical. Every healthy child needs to be here every school day. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 7, consent agenda items. Bid recommendations, Dr. Berger.
Yes, a few more this month, and they'll pick up as we close out the fiscal year. Probably a couple things of note where there were some items there for Waynesville Middle School as we approach the completion of that project. Looking forward to that. Also excited about the RFP for voluntary benefits. Those are the benefits that the employees pay for themselves, and putting those on an electronic platform so they can do those kind of outside of heavy sales pitch or anything. And if they want support beyond that, they can certainly solicit it.
Financials, Dr. Berger.
Financial report for April 10th, 2018 in the Missouri Securities Investment Program, $45,654,169.40. $10.5 million in the CDs with the Bank of Crocker in our general account, $1,409,692.91. Payroll account, $3,363.44. Total funds, $57,567,225.75.
Contracts, MOUs, Dr. Berger.
Just entertain any questions the board might have on them.
Comments, questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Keelan makes a motion, Dr. Fulmer second. All in favor? 7-0. Number 8, CTA Spotlight on Education. Mrs. Moore. Am I right here?
Good evening. Let me begin by thanking our board for allowing us to be here tonight and recognizing our building. I am here tonight to honor two of our wonderful staff members, Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Podowski from WSGC. First, I want to introduce our classified staff member, Ms. Podowski, or as the students call her, Mrs. P. Mrs. P has been a paraprofessional with WSGC for 5 years. She always has a positive attitude, a smile on her face, and works tirelessly to ensure that the students at WSGC are pushed to be the best they can be. This is what the staff and students had to say about Mrs. P. She is an amazing asset to the 6th grade center, and she has an amazing work ethic. Mrs. P is a consummate professional. She embodies all of the traits of an educator. She is kind, considerate, compassionate, fair, and consistent. She is always looking for ways to help the students and can always be seen with a smile on her face. She is a go-to person at WSGC, and the building would not be the same without her. A student said she is always there in a time of need and is always there when anyone needs help. Another student said Mrs. P is remarkable and she is a very nice helper. Next is our certified staff member, Mrs. Angie Wilson. Mrs. Wilson has been a 6th grade teacher at WSGC for 5 years. She creates engaging lessons for her students and creates a fun learning environment for her students. She is constantly helping students achieve their full potential as well as providing support for fellow colleagues. This is what the staff and students had to say about Mrs. Wilson. Angie is an inspiration to her students, her teaching team, and the staff. She is an intricate part of her lead mixer group, the building steering team, PBL planning team, and the ELA team. She is always working to improve the learning of her students while also assisting staff in any way she can. She is always willing to take the extra step to help out in any way she can. Students also love her. One student stated that Mrs. Wilson is always helping people somehow or just trying to support others. Another student wanted to thank her for being an amazing teacher she could look up to, and that when she was a teacher someday, she wanted to be just like her. As you can see, our building is truly lucky to have these 2 staff members to serve as examples to both peers and students. Thank you, and join me in congratulating these deserving members of the WSGC staff.
May 10th. May the 7th. Region 8 meeting. Okay.
I take 2, 1, 2.
May the 10th.
High school, turn it out.
Number 9, staff recognitions, Transportation Employee of the Month, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor tonight to recognize Jess Magnia as Transportation Employee of the Month. Jess has been a bus driver for the Waynesville School District for 2 years. He is highly respected amongst his peers, and he always has a smile on his face. Jess always focuses on the safety of students and what's best for them. A fellow coworker said he's always smiling and goes above and beyond to ensure that students are safe every day. He's willing to help with trips and anything else that's needed to be done. He has a great personality and takes great pride in his job. Thank you, Jess. We greatly appreciate the work that you do.
This way, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, lots of smiles, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much.
Number 10, discussion items, impact aid update, Dr. Henry, Dr. Berger.
Thank you, Mr. President. No big slideshow on this. Many of these things you've been updated on, but I do want to just bring a few additional new items to the board's attention. And of course, Dr. Berger can chime in whenever he would like, and probably has some information at the end here he can share with you on payments received. But first and foremost, I again want to thank our public. The passage of Proposition 1 and securing our local effort was a key piece of protecting our B2 heavily impacted aid. As you all remember, and I'm sure much of our community after our information sessions last year remember that we have 2 parts of impact aid really two major parts: basic support and then heavily impacted aid, of which we're fortunate beneficiaries of. So Proposition 1 protected that second part, which really is essential in capital improvements for our district and also helping to keep our tax rate low. This year, with the omnibus bill at the federal level, an additional $81 million was given to impact aid. So that's a great sign for us as a program. Approximately 35% of our budget is made up through federal funds. The biggest revenue source of that is impact aid, obviously. Basic support is approximately $10 million a year for us, and then B2 heavily impacted aid is approximately $8.5 million a year for us, and that money goes towards capital improvements and capital projects in Fund 4. So we have one other little stream that you've heard a little bit about this spring, and that's the Department of Defense line. All those other funds come through the Department of Education. Department of Defense has a line that comes to us, and it's about $600,000, which currently we've been using in capital projects that we're proposing to the board to be moved towards salary. So we appreciate the work of our operations department. They work diligently in monitoring this and protecting us so we can keep those vital B2 funds flowing in. There are really two big issues I want to share with you, and then I'm going to let Dr. Berger talk a little bit about the monies we've brought in thus far. At the federal level, House Resolution 5199 is an educational savings account act that's being proposed. As a school board, it is vital for you to understand that is really a voucher bill. That is not anything that would be beneficial for our district. Impact aid, as you well know, is money paid in lieu of taxes on federal lands. So we do not tax any of the lands on Fort Leonard Wood. That money that the government pays comes to us in lieu of any kind of taxation. What 5199 would do is take a portion of those funds and allow military students to use them in charter schools, online schools, other public school districts, taking that money out of the impact aid program and redistributing it in other places, which would be devastating for the impact aid program. I would encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to contact our Congresswoman and continue to express our concerns with anything like 5199 or any other version that may come about throughout the legislative process now or ever, because those monies in impact aid are set aside. They are in lieu of taxes paid by the government for federal land. So that's a critical piece. Another critical piece is per pupil expenditure. We worked very hard to secure our local effort through Proposition 1. And as we mentioned several times during the campaign last year, there are three prongs to impact aid. One's the level of impaction. You have to be 45% impacted. The other is being at 95% of your comparison group, which we talked about frequently last year. That was secured through Proposition 1. The other one is per pupil expenditure. Per pupil expenditure, now the current guidelines on this is you cannot spend more than the state or national average, and that depends on whichever's higher. So for us, Missouri is lower through a great deal of work with Dr. Berger and Mr. Harrison tracking this down, because it was a very elusive number that we weren't real happy it took so long to track down, but we did finally get the numbers the department was using. Missouri's lower than the national average, so we can use the national average as our spending limit. Okay, the average in that national average. So we're able to spend up to that level, but we have to constantly keep our eye on per pupil expenditures, because if that goes above the national average, or if Missouri would go above the national average and we'd exceed Missouri, again, we could lose those B2 funds. Now, I know we've talked to you quite a bit about salary, and a great deal of work has went into monitoring this PPE issue, monitoring our expenditures and the impact of potential salary increases, and we're very confident that what we'll propose to you will not put us beyond that. But it's very important to understand that we always need to take that course, that tact when looking at our expenditures, because it's just those can fluctuate and change, and we don't want to fall out based on PPE. So at this time, I'll let Dr. Berger discuss kind of what we've brought in this year and anything else he would like to throw in regards to impact aid.
Well, just supporting, first of all, the PPE conversation. That is not as imminent of a threat as the local effort was. Local effort was no doubt. We were going to hit local effort. We were going to fall out of B2. PPE is serious, catching the central office team up to speed on that. As Dr. Henry mentioned, Mr. Harrison's done some extensive work directly with NCES to get accurate projections on that. But we'll be bringing that information to the board soon, or perhaps even at retreat for a little deeper dive into that. But it'll be something that we'll monitor. But again, it's not as imminent. I don't want to put it in the same category as our local effort was. Currently, I wrote you, or last year, I should say, I wrote you a board update talking about how things at the federal level had kind of stalled in terms of the money is there, but they're having trouble getting the money kicked out. I enjoyed about my first 3 years here here in Waynesville. The money actually, it's spread out, impact aid is spread out over about 3 years, and they really got that closed down to about 2 years. So we'll get a fiscal 19 payment, but then we'll get prior year payments back a couple years too. Well, they kind of condensed that down to 2 years, but unfortunately that has taken just the opposite turn. So last year at this time, I wrote this board update and said, I need another payment to make the budget. Missouri, we're July to June, and the feds are October to September. So they don't care about getting money out to us before June 30th, so we can make budget this year. So I'm a little concerned about that right now. We brought in $6.9 million. We need to bring in $15 million total to make budget. It doesn't mean that the money would be allocated to us. It would be promised to us, but it's hung up in D.C. right now with the Department of Education. Last word was they were going to try to get that kicked out in April, and we almost know with guarantee that that's 2 months delayed of what they say. If they're saying April, we've got 2 months. And so we'll be monitoring that closely, and if I get more concerned with that, that will be a lot of correspondence to Impact Aid and Department of Ed. And, of course, if it becomes obvious that we're not going to be able to bring that money in, I'll get the board up to speed and may require board be reflective in the June budget update. So I think that's probably it. Dr. Henry, anything else that you want me to
I would
expand
just
on?
encourage you to please stay on top of this voucher issue. I know I said last year we really need to start looking at that, and sure enough, it came around in some actual language this year, and that's going to continue to be a push. So just ask you to stay plugged into the, that's one of the great things we have. We have this federal funding, and we have to not only watch the state stuff, but also the federal stuff when it comes down to the budgetary decisions. So just encourage you to stay on top of that, and be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Just a comment, Dr. Henry, in regard to, you're talking about the federal side. I was at the law conference earlier this year, and MSBA is concerned about the same issues for the state of Missouri. There are several pending bills in both the House and the Senate side that are leaning toward the voucher. They're having difficulty coming out of committee, but I would encourage every board member to call your reps and express your concern about going to vouchers for any students in Missouri, because basically what it ensures is especially smaller districts lose a few students, and that's devastating to their budgets. The problem, remember with charter schools, they don't run by the same standards we do. They don't have to have the same certification. They don't have to pass the same rigid assessments that public schools do. So, that's vouchers are not the way to go. And if you look at the states that have gone to them, Detroit, Michigan, they ruin the public school setting. So, please not only call your your federal reps, but please call your state reps and make sure they understand that vouchers are not the way Missouri wants to go.
Right.
It's House Bill 2247 has the most traction right now, if you want to cite that in your correspondence.
And it's certainly, and another thing to point out why it's even more important in our district is usually they attach that to certain subgroups of students. Military students are one of the subgroups that comes up in our state. So that's something that have an impact. And just to reiterate what Dr. Fulmer said, none of these groups outside of unless they go to a public school have to meet the same levels of rigor and standards as what we do. So that's something to certainly think about.
Thank you. B, proposed job descriptions, first reading, Mrs. Bills.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following attached proposed job description revisions are presented for the board's review as first reading. 2.1.1 Assistant Superintendent Personnel Services, 2.4.1 Assistant Superintendent Operational Services, 2.15.3 Assistant Superintendent Instructional Services, 2.20.1 Director of Community Resources and Grants Management, 2.21.1 Director of Curriculum and Instructional Technology, 2.28.1 Director of Special Services, 2.47.1 Director of Information Systems. In addition, the following attached proposed new job descriptions are presented for board's first reading. 2.16.2 Director of Student Services, 2.21.3 Coordinator of Alternative Education.
Thank you, Mrs. Bills. C, CTA salary presentation, Mrs. Dobbin and Mrs. Carter.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce these two brave young ladies. We had, I'm not going to steal too much of their thunder, but we had an expanded salary committee this year, as we talked about at the board, and I at the very last meeting I said, can I get some volunteers to present to the board on the work that we've done? And well, if I'll just go like this. That's kind of what it sounded like at that point in time, and then we had Mrs. Dubon and Mrs. Carter at the front of the room. They said, "We'll do it," and so please give them your undivided attention and support. They're the bravest of folks that we had out there, and we sure appreciate all the extra work because they have busy full-time jobs as it is, and we appreciate their extra work on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. Good evening. My name is Jamie Carter. I'm a first grade teacher at Wood Elementary.
And my name is Elsa Duban, and I'm the principal secretary at Wood Elementary.
We're here to represent the Salary Committee and our proposal for the 2018-2019 salary schedule adjustments. Next slide.
Oh, you got a clicker there, sorry.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right, yep.
Okay, so over the past month, we have had 3 meetings to discuss issues discovered in our current salary schedule and the possible methods to address these issues. So on our first meeting, we discussed these issues by looking at the percentage raise associated with each step and compared our certified and classified salary schedule to those of other districts around us. And after this meeting, we sent out a survey to the staff to see what they preferred. On our second meeting, we reviewed the responses of our district survey, and we used this data and the results from meeting 1 to discuss the recommendations for addressing the issues to the current salary schedule. Finally, on our third meeting, we reviewed the recommendations and addressed additional recommendations for salary given if the money was available. So, what we found in these meetings is that compared to the local districts, our salary schedule fell behind in the areas of masters and up with 10 years or more of experience, as demonstrated in the comparison of Rolla and Camdenton. You want me to click for you? Yes. Okay.
Surveys were sent out to staff for which we received great response. Certified surveys received indicated the following. 84.44 would prefer increase in salary, 1.56 would prefer increase in SOS, 3.5% would prefer increase in leadership stipends, 10.5 would prefer increase in a combination of other benefits. To be competitive with the 2 local competitors, if given a choice, we asked which of the following scenarios would you support to address this issue. The results were 52.14, they would prefer the multiplier increase, 23.74 would prefer longevity, 17.9 would prefer combination, and 6.23 would use the same process we are using right now. We also sent surveys to classified, and we received the indicating the following. 60.82 would prefer increase in hourly wages, 23.71 would prefer increase in health care, and 15.46 would prefer increase in other benefits.
Okay, so the common theme amongst the surveys is that certified and classified both preferred money to go into the salary. Certified staff also preferred a smaller addition to the base salary with an increase in the multiplier for masters and beyond. Additional salary considerations include SOS increases and improvements, paraprofessional improvements and increases, and a potential pilot sick leave buyback. All right, so our first salary proposal is to increase the multipliers for the master's column and over, leaving all other columns the same. The increase proposed would be as follows: 3% for the master's, 2.7% for master's plus 16 years, 2.5% for master's plus 24 years, and 2% for all the remaining columns. In addition to the multiplier, Salary Committee is proposing that everyone be awarded a 0.5% to their base salary. As a committee, we feel in this way everybody would feel like they're getting something. Okay, so in this slide you can see the multipliers and how if we added these multipliers it would make us more compatible with Rolla and Camdenton as displayed in the charts.
The classified preferred option was 0.5% additional wage to the base number.
Okay, so Dr. Burgel, I'll try my best on this one.
Will be fine, but I'll pick it for you.
In the following chart, you can see where we plan to acquire the funds to make these proposed changes, as well as the cost of these changes. So if you look in that first box, certified salary, increasing the multiplier and movement July 1 would cost roughly $1,272,242.12. Classified salary with a 0.5% base increase, movement July 1, $224,000, and then insurance benefits at 8.4% with a increase in retirement would be roughly $522,000. So with all of this, it's about $2 million, and below is how we plan to, the adjustments to get those funds. So in local revenue, from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19, that's about a $150,000 increase. State revenue is about a $550,000 increase. And then federal revenue, $1,100,000, which brings us to $1.8 million. In addition, we are looking at getting rid of the GAP plan. Very few of our employees used it, and that would provide us the remaining $180,000 needed to make these proposed changes.
If money is available after addressing salary and insurance, these are the additional recommendations for the Board of Education today. For certified, SOS, which was the second priority for certified, with year one transition SOS from a flat payment to an hourly payment with caps on the number of hours. Year two, increase the hourly pay associated with SOS. And year three, allow teachers to count a defined number of hours for professional development, committee work, and other instructional improvement. For classified, paraprofessional pay, which was second priority for classified, team members indicated that similar to teachers who earn advanced degrees, there is a significant difference in the quality of service provided by paraprofessionals who have a degree. The following scenarios regarding pay for additional training and or degrees were shared. Providing a stipend for additional training, providing a stipend for educational coursework, providing a program similar to SOS where paraprofessionals would gain additional compensation for additional duties. Depending on available funding, a possible phase in for this request would be as follows. Year one, add days to the paraprofessional contract, which is developmental year for development of the paraprofessional SOS program. Year 2, implement paraprofessional SOS program. And year 3, evaluate effectiveness of the program. Sick leave. The sick leave buyback program, of all incentives we discussed, this option received the least support. Many team members felt the current policy was adequate, and additions to address the accumulated leave days would not affect many staff members in the district. Providing funding exists and addressing salary and secondary options we spoke of previously. The team was agreeable to a pilot year or 2 to determine if the buyback program would work. So the health leave buyback proposal will be the health leave days lost in 2018 were 126 total. Proposed at a $10 per day buyback, it would be a total of 1,260. Considering that this program would have implications on the health pool. Current practice calls for all lost days to be contributed to the health pool.
That's all we have for you this evening. If you have any further questions, you can ask Dr. Berger, Dr. Henry, or Mrs. Bells. Thank you for having us this evening.
Great job, guys.
All right, D, fiscal year 19 staffing plan, first reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. The FY19 staffing plan is presented to the board as first reading, and I would be happy to answer any questions, so please contact my office between now and the next board meeting, please.
Thank you. E, MSBA policy update, first reading, Dr. Henry.
Yes, we had one policy in the last batch that we needed to run through our local legal to make sure to align with our suicide awareness and prevention program that we had in place. So that has been done, and it's now available for first reading.
11, action items, proposed job description revisions, second reading, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following attached job description revisions are presented for your review as second reading. 3.19.1, speech and language pathologist. 4.8.4, accounting specialist. 4.13.9, practical nursing program secretary. 5.1.3, parent educator. Administration requests approval for the above job descriptions as presented, please.
Questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion, Mr. Keeling, second, Dr. Fulmer. Vote. 7-0 in favor. B, 2018-2019 Professional Development Handbook, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Professional Development Handbook is presented annually for board approval. The handbook includes applicable statutory requirements and is reviewed and updated annually by the District Professional Development Committee. Administration requests approval of the 2018-2019 Professional Development Handbook as presented.
Questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion, Mr. Keeling, second.
Second.
Dr. Fulmer, seconds that. All in favor? 7-0. District Assessment Plan, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. The district assessment plan is reviewed, updated, and presented annually for approval. The assessment plan outlines assessments that will be utilized by the district, use and dissemination of results, as well as test security procedures. Administration requests approval of the district assessment plan as presented.
Questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Mr. O'Reilly, second by Mr. Quinn. All in favor, aye. Show of hands. 7-0 pass. Proposed 2018-2019 Classified Mentor Handbook, second reading, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. The attached proposed 2018-19 Classified Mentor Handbook is presented for the board, and administration is requesting approval at this time.
Questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Keelan makes a motion. Have a second. Mr. Quinn makes a second. All in favor? Show of hands. 7-0. E. Thank you. Proposed 2018-2019 Transportation Handbook, second reading, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. The attached 2018-19 Transportation Handbook is presented as second reading for the board, and administration is requesting approval at this time, please.
Questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Fulmer makes a motion, Mr. Riley seconds. All in favor, show of hands. 7-0 pass. F, JECA-2-AP, admission of students, foreign exchange students. Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. JECA 2AP, admission of students, foreign exchange students, was reviewed within the Instructional Services Advisory, and revisions were suggested in order to provide additional clarity and direction with the foreign exchange student process. Administration requests approval of JEC 2AP, admission of students as presented.
Any questions or comments?
How many foreign exchange students do we average a year?
Typically 2.
Okay. So part of this is just kind of setting a limit and the video interview process, which is a good idea.
And clarifying the process, because sometimes they ask for slots, for us to save slots and not actually give us a full application. So we just want to make sure that that's clear for the agencies that solicit foreign exchange students.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No. I'll make a motion, though.
Motion, Mr. Keeling, have a second.
I'll second it. I served.
Dr. Fulmer makes a second on that. Show of hands. 7-0. Yes. G, MSBA policy and procedure updates. Second reading, Dr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. These were the policies shared with you for first reading last month. I've received no questions in between, so we're offering these for approval.
Questions or comments? Do I have a motion? Mr. Deering makes a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Keeling makes a second. All in favor, show of hands. 7-0. Yes. H, health and auxiliary benefits. Dr. Berger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to detail just a few things here for you, and I've actually asked Jeremy to put that up on the board. You also will be able to see it on your board artifacts there. Probably better up here, but I did want to make sure you captured these few points. First of all, I need to tell you that our insurance consortium that makes up more than 80 school districts, I'll kind of set the table by telling you the cost to claims ratio, so the amount of money that was going in, the amount that was being paid out in claims was not running very well. For the last few months, it's been running about 107 to 110%. Anything above 100, if it was at 100%, they could still justify an increase because of medical trend. But so at that, and I will tell you that Waynesville, the biggest fish in the pond, out of those 80 districts, we have more live bodies in that pool than anybody else. We were running much, much worse than the consortium. So really, I say that to tell you that this benefits us greatly to be in this group because we're protected this year. There will hopefully be a few years that we will help the group because we'll be running under 100 and we'll be maybe carrying the load. We are currently not carrying the load. This was kind of spelling out to be about 16, 18% increase after they did their magic. The group, the ASO that I'll speak about in just a minute, primarily they bid out the pharmaceutical benefit management. That was projected to save $15 million over the next 3 years. The consortium carries a balance of about $70 million. That was the big thing that adjusted, but there were some slight things that made all of the schools, all 80 school districts, more uniform within that consortium. So that first column that you can't see very well up there, you can certainly see it on your artifacts, and I see some of you using that, but that represents the 8.4% increase. So, the scare tactic of me giving you the 15% and then coming back with 8, that's back down to single digits, so that's a positive. But still more of an increase than we'd want. In fact, that's $500,000 worth of increase for all of our eligible employees. And, sometimes our patrons or our employees don't recognize we're not a state insurance. We don't get it from the state group like maybe MoDOT employees or something. That's a local decision. And typically when you're confronted with an 8.4% increase, you start looking at how you can water down your benefit. We're able to hold on this, and it's a very competitive benefit to districts like us Ozark Conference, COC school districts. But that moving from 477 to 517, that top left cell up there is the base plan. All those others are an 8.4% increase too, but those are just buy-up plans. So that's kind of the bad news and good news, and that looked really bad, came in at 8.4, okay, we can swallow that. Then we started looking at, is there anything within the plan setup that we can actually make our plan a little bit better? Let's look for a win in this. And if you look at over in the bottom right, I put a graphic in there, and on the right it says Aetna, and on the left it says Anthem. We promote ourselves as Missouri Educators Trust as a full network group. But when all those groups came together, all 80 school districts came together, about 2/3 of them were Aetna and 1/3 of them were Anthem. And if you'll look down through there, those are not insurance carriers like you might remember back, several years ago when the district was fully insured. Those insurance carriers work as ASOs, administrative services only. Met is the insurance company. We don't give them any profit. We only contract with them to do administrative services only. But we are currently Aetna. And so the way that grid works is, you see it says Barnes, Jewish, St. Louis. It's in network in both the Blue Access and the Choice. It's in network in both Aetna and Anthem. But if you look down through there, you'll see a no. It's the very second one, and some of our employees know there is one group of hospitals that our employees do not get access to currently, and that is Cox. Okay? So see, it's a no. If we move, and the rest of them are yes, because for the most part, we're open access. But if we move our ASO services at no cost, it's a total district decision, over to Anthem, we pick up Cox. There's a small win. Small, but there's a win there. We do have a few employees that would choose to go to Cox, and they would now be in network. What are the implications? Virtually none. I mean, I've turned over every stone I believe I can find. I've asked everybody at Arthur J. Gallagher, everybody through Med, I've asked colleagues. The one change is going to be the card in the employee's pocket. And, some of that, on that transition, I'm, of course, concerned about that. We carry cards that are 2 or 3 years old in our wallets, and you've got to get that card turned over from Aetna to Anthem. Okay? But just for that, there is a couple other wins. If you look down there, it says Anthem considers school-based, I got to read it over here, school-based health clinics a wellness incentive. Co-pays will be waived for the employee at each school-based health clinic. So where currently we have to pay a $25 copay, we are working on that. That is not correct. That changed today. They will not confirm that it's done, but I think it's trending to being done. And so I think there could be 2 wins in this. One is we expand our network and our school-based clinic for our employees only. If they will go there, I think we've got a better than good shot of getting that waived, because it would take the board, and I'm on 1 vote on the board, but the board to vote that they would accept that as a wellness visit. So I think there's another win. When we are faced with an 8.4% increase at $500,000, we start looking at our ancillary benefits, our secondary benefits, and seeing if we can leverage those. As you'll see up there under dental, that came in as a 12% increase. By going to the standard, let me make sure we could get that increase down to 7%. And that had to go with the vision, so moving both of them, the vision was a no increase. So although it's more than last year, we went from 12% back down to 7% because we leveraged standard versus guardian. And we really, for the most part, don't look at network there. What we do is a geo study called, we don't do it, our Arthur J. Gallagher does it for us, but we just ensure there are providers in our community. If we go from one and go to the other, we got to ensure there's providers. And really, if you have someone who's out of network, they can apply for the network. It's from my understanding, it's a more simple process than obviously whenever you're going in and out of network in health. The third thing, the ASO, the health, the ASO, the dental vision, and then it was alluded to earlier in the salary presentation. If you look down at the bottom, that says gap plan, that was $20 a month. And the problem, the thing that troubled me about the gap plan for years, for 5 years, I guess, is we were paying a premium into the gap plan at about $150,000 to $180,000, and just out of lack of utilization of that plan, we were getting about $25,000 benefit out of that. Well, that's the insurance company, from a board-paid benefit that virtually no other school district offers, was making $100,000 on us. So what we didn't want to just unilaterally take that from our employees. we took that back to the committee and said, would you rather see that money reallocated to the salary schedule? Can we use that money somewhere else? And that came back at a 76% approval rate on the survey. Makes a lot of sense. I think anybody who understands that issue would want that on the salary, because if you're like me, I think I've been here 5 years. I'm sure I've had countless eligible claims, but they're just not worth either going for, or they're a little bit complicated, and I've missed money. I've left money on the table on that personally, and I think that's the consent of many of our employees as dictated in that survey. So all that, a little more detail than I usually do. That's the customary format that we offer the board each month. But just the change that I think the takeaways are 8.4% increase. That's not great, but can we find a win here? I think we can by going from Aetna to Anthem and pick up the Cox network. Entertain any questions you might have on that. I know that's a little wordy on that, as was my board update on that too, Mr. Schultz, I believe. So,
Well, I think we all realize over the last few years we've been waiting for this to happen.
Yep.
We've been, every year he comes in and goes,
yeah.
we dodged a bullet this year, guys.
Yeah.
So I think it was pretty well expected. Do I have a motion on action item H?
So moved.
Dr. Farmer makes the motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Quinn seconds. Show in favor, show of hands. 7-0 in favor. Action item I, DODEA grant authorization. Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Department of Defense Education Agency recently announced a new 5-year grant award cycle. The focus of the grant is to support college and career readiness in STEM. The proposed grant would focus on supporting the high school and elementary schools with virtual learning, academic support, STEM, and robotics. The grant only allows the selection of up to 2 grade bands. So we realize that the middle school is not in there, but we will internally provide similar supports for our middle school. The administration requests a motion to authorize the administration to develop and submit a DODEA grant application in the amount of $1,250,000 during the current DODEA grant RFP cycle, and those are due on May 2nd.
I'm sure I have a motion.
Start writing.
Dr. Fuller makes the motion. I assume that means. Mr. Keenly seconds. All in favor, show of hands. 7-0. J, Middle School Sports Expansion Proposal. Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have been working on looking at options to expand our middle school sports program, and at this time, administration is requesting to expand our middle school sports program and add baseball and softball for next school year, both of these which will be played in the spring.
Okay. Do I have any questions or comments on that? Do we have a motion? Mr. Deering makes the motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Quinn makes a second. All in favor, show of hands. 7-0 pass. And K, excuse board member absences.
That would be me, I believe,
Dr.
Mr.
Anderson.
President. Well, we had an unexpected surprise this afternoon, and so actually, given the fact that and I won't go into detail, but I know that the business that Mr. Quinn was involved in was extremely important. I was planning to request forgiveness for the meetings, and I will still do so because I feel like he was out doing very, very important things for all of us. So I'm asking that Mr. Quinn's absences for the last 2 months be excused so that he may continue his board status.
Do I have a motion?
Yes.
I make a motion.
Mr. Riley makes the motion. Dr. Fulmer seconds. Show of hands. 7-0 in favor. Want to take a minute, thank everybody. Thank you guys for nominating me for president. It's kind of a special deal for me. My grandpa served as president on this board. I graduate here. It's kind of full circle. I've got a coach on one side, the discipline principal on my other, and so it's kind of a humbled and honored. So thank you all very much, and welcome Janet to this group of nuts. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
That's my motion.
Second, Mr. O'Reilly. All in favor? We are adjourned.